focus.
All
Ooh.
right. No, perfect. Welcome aboard, everyone. Charles Moscowitz here. Michael D. Shaw is my guest. And we are holding fort as we tend to do Thursday evenings, Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. And of course, the program is then downloaded into the podcast system. Mike, thanks for joining me as always.
Always a pleasure.
All right. I want to start with the somewhat good news at first, before we get into the topic of the Red-Green Alliance, as I see it. And that is that the stupid shutdown is over, that it did not work for them. It's quite clear now, not only based on their own public statements, but on a lot of evidence, that this was just another attempt to try to stop President Trump and the MAGA movement. It is that simple, except this time they didn't care about cutting people's salaries off, making them work without pay, or eventually cutting off food supplies to many people who are truly needy, putting aside the fact that a lot of people aren't. That's another subject. And that it got to be so onerous that finally you had a couple of people step forward and break with it on both the Senate and the House. And then you see how the Democratic Party has been completely captured by the left, in that there was all this screaming and gnashing of teeth against them for doing so. I mean, what were they expecting? I think obviously they wanted to keep the government shut down for good until the midterms, until Trump is gone. And it didn't work. So what are they going to do now?
Let me ask you this. Two questions.
Yeah.
What happens to Chucky Schumer now? And how, in any kind of right mind, did they think this was going to work?
I think that they're just using, as Catherine Clark here in Boston, that radical shrew from up in the North Shore of Boston, said this is the only leverage they have. They felt like, since they don't have a majority in Congress, they don't have the White House, they don't have the Supreme Court, this is the last resort. And that's what they did. So they didn't care that they were playing ball.
Right. But last resort, what? What was the plan?
To try to stop Trump. I mean, they've tried to shoot him. They've tried to bankrupt him. They tried to have him removed from ballots. They've tried to destroy his reputation. They've tried to damage his family. They've tried everything, impeachments. What else do they have in their toolbox but this? They've tried the judicial insurrection, which has been partially successful, but not really. They tried the King's Rally, which nursing homes opened up for the day, and it just flopped. So this was it. I mean, so that gets me to where I think they're now going, now that this is flopped. And that is, they're going to violence. It's quite clear the rhetoric coming out of them is brutal, and it's like we
Well, here again, I ask, you're right, but what's the long-term plan? Violence is going to work either.
No. Well, they're just thrashing around. I mean, they've got nothing.
This is all what, just kabuki theater?
Well, they can't take Trump on the issues because they'll lose, and they need to continue to gin up the cult. So they have to provide boo bait for the bubbas, as it were, just more kabuki theater, as you call it.
I'm not sure they have that many bubbas on their side, but be that as it may.
Well, they still have, they got a strong following. They still are consolidating their control over the red states, as it were. They still have the big oligarchs like Soros and the guy over at LinkedIn, Hoffman, and the Tides Foundation, which, by the way, it's in Los Angeles. It's this huge slush fund by which the oligarchs and the billionaires, as Elizabeth Warren used to say, the millionaires and the billionaires can contribute money without their name associated with it. That way they don't have to be held responsible. And they've got the international order. They've got, these people have a lot of power. And I just think that they're going to try, and I include in that the Rhino Republicans, and they're just going to try to ride it out and hope they can outlast Trump. Now they're already starting with articles about Trump being a lame duck, which is, of course, absurd. And that it's the nightmare will be over. They're just counting the days.
So what you're saying is they're doing everything except trying to come up with effective policy.
They can't. They don't have effective policy. Trump's policies, everyone knows, are right in every sense. Foreign policy, domestic policy, all of it. Trump's the peace president. He's a nationalist. He wants to protect American labor and industry from foreign competition. He wants to preserve traditional values, which means no more sex change for children. What do they have? Open borders? I mean, they don't have anything that's going to generate enough support to give them actual power. They still have.
Help me with this. With all the brain trust they have, they never have meetings in smoke-filled rooms, as they used to say, saying, maybe this ain't working. Maybe we ought to come up with some better policies. Does that not ever occur?
I think that they know that it doesn't work, but they know that it fulfills their internationalist, globalist, illuminated agenda. And their goal is to not have that exposed. The sociologist Christopher Lasch wrote a book about this before he passed away. He was an NYU professor, a liberal. The New York Times actually did a piece on this before Trump's election, saying that he had predicted Trump, because he pointed out that for the first time in history, you have a situation where rather than have the people, the average person, struggling against elite control, you now have the elitists struggling to stop the people by using censorship, by using nullifying elections, debanking people from their bank accounts, the propaganda. You even saw recently in Britain, they doctored a Trump speech at the January 6th assembly. And by the way, the truth is coming out on that, as we've seen. We now have a name of a Capitol Police officer, Kirchhoff, I believe it is, who was by 99% sure planted the 2 pipe bombs at the Democratic and Republican National Committee hours before the assembly, which was why the assembly was shut down. It had nothing to do with the protests. And which tells us it was an inside job. And they're struggling to control and contain the narrative, but they can't. It's coming up, and things are moving forward. So
you're saying they're so locked in to the narrative that they're going to, die on the hill to the last man of stuff that doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's not that they're going to die. They're used to controlling the narrative, and they have the toolbox, the means to control that narrative.
Well, not as much anymore.
Although I have to tell you, ultimately, I think they're depending, down the road on controlling artificial intelligence. Now, this is a great tool. I love ChatGPT. I don't know if you use it at all, but it's a tremendous tool. However, I'm old enough and I'm well read enough that I know that it leans liberal and that it edits out conservative opinion and that it is created by people with an agenda. So I can use it and put it into the proper context.
Well, there are other tools besides.
Yeah, but there's the big ones. So, the ChatGPT.
Well, and Grok, which is Elon Musk.
It is Musk, but even that, I mean, it's still controlled. I mean, Musk can't be everywhere. Musk has done a huge service by taking over Twitter. I mean, if it hadn't been for that, I don't know where we'd be right now in terms of control of the digital space. But that's so that can happen, and I'm optimistic about that. But nevertheless, I mean, these tools lean left, and younger people don't have the sophistication or the intellectual, background or knowledge to understand that. So I think that these people look long term. Karl Marx wrote about this. that they take a very long view.
Well, it
And
was
that's,
Gramsci, the march through the
yes,
institutions.
yeah,
But I mean, to be fair, if you look at Wikipedia, if you look at encyclopedias, if you look at news media, it's always leaned to the left. So it's really
right.
nothing new.
Well, it's
But
the only thing new about it is that ChatGPT, that the artificial intelligence technology is something that's very new and very powerful and very pervasive, and it's gotten to the point where it almost has its own life. It can make decisions digitally, and that it's difficult for any of us, myself included, sometimes to see the difference between digitally arrived at decisions which are devoid of any judgment or any morality or any, life, to a human decision. It's difficult to determine the difference. And it is taking over more and more functions of decision making in our life. It could very seriously affect the economy going forward because it doesn't actually produce anything. It's a picture of things. It's a repository of things produced by other people. And we could talk about who those people are. But it's going to put people out of work. And it could result, I read an article about this actually for my class, that within the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to have like a 20% unemployment because of ChatGPT already, and the others. Already, it's taking over entire areas of industry and of work. So I think they're depending on that. Um, right? I mean, they're depending on controlling that very powerful medium. It's very monopolistic. It goes after people who challenge it. Apparently, I think there was a case where they went after this person who I think their son committed suicide because they were urged through ChatGPT, not ChatGPT, but one of them. And when they brought this up and they went to the media, they were being spied on. I mean, they were being harassed, and they had. I mean, it's ugly. I mean, the possibilities of this.
well, it is now. Earlier in the week, Michael Burry, who you may recall as the Big Short guy, although in fact there were people that made more money on that Big Short than he did. But anyway, he came out on his uh, Twitter account, I believe, a few days ago, saying that they're overstating the profits in the AI business
Okay.
by understating the depreciation, and he thinks that it's not going to be quite as huge as they say, but remains to be seen. But
Right.
here's the guy who made a lot of money going against the grain. So
Okay. Well, I mean, look, and I also am not. Look, I mean, President Trump has taken the position of developing all of it full speed ahead. He's
yeah,
already earmarked over $100 million, and Vice President Vance gave a very important speech about this in Europe and the benefits of it to the Defense Department, which are enormous. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just, it's, and also, I mean, look, the fact is that it's an arms race in a way. You have to beat the Ruskies and the Chi-Coms, right? I mean, if they get
yeah.
control over AI, they'll control the brain of the world. I mean, it's a serious matter. So I'm not saying let's not go ahead and develop all of the technologies. I mean, the entire internet was really developed by the Defense Department back in the 1960s, the DARPA.
Yeah.
So there's nothing. I mean, I'm not against that. I'm just saying that there is a dangerous downside to it. I don't know what the answer to that is. I know as individuals, we have to be very discerning about any information we get from that. We have to continue to believe in God. We have to continue to pray. We have to continue to look within at what makes sense for us. And we have to understand that we are surrounded by lies. It's that simple.
Yeah.
It's sort of part of being a sovereign
Of course,
American.
we always have been.
Of
We
course.
always have been.
But those lies are now being amplified to a degree
Yeah.
that is more dangerous than ever, I think. I mean, I suppose you could say that back in the day, in kind of a totalitarian state, but it was local, it was regional, and it could go away, and it had to compete with other nations. Now you have an international order that could very well control this, and it's very dangerous. And they are trying to do that. So, to the Red Green Alliance.
Yes.
I really have. I've observed this going way back. I think it goes back to 9/11 and other things, but it became sort of on the forefront after Israel was attacked by Hamas on October the 7th of 2023. And even before the invasion was over, and you had people engaging in really medieval level of atrocities against Israelis and Israeli residents of Israel, you had the left wing coming out and waving Palestinian flags and wearing keffiyehs. We didn't realize there were as many radical Muslims in the United States up until that point, not to mention in Europe, where there were millions of them. And the Europeans have let people come in for reasons that, I don't know, we could speculate about. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, the official reason, I think, is because Europeans are getting older and they need younger people to support their welfare states. But that's not what's happened. I mean, these people themselves are part of the welfare. And they haven't been all that productive. They have not been willing to assimilate into their societies. They're very separatist. It's not like past immigration groups, like Italians or Jews or Irish or Polish or French. They, who are going out of their way to become Americans and are going out of their way to take on the mores of America, while at the same time retaining their religious identity. This is more of a kind of a nation within a nation. And they really showed themselves on October 7th, but the real shocking aspect to it was the degree by which they were aligned with the international left. And that included American elitist students at Harvard who signed this letter. I remember we talked about it right after.
Well, I mean, you have to realize that the left has always been anti-Semitic from day one.
Right.
Even the alleged Jews who were Bolsheviks were self-hating Jews.
Oh yeah, I agree totally.
So you have that aspect, and the ideal thing with Muslims is that they hate Christians, and so do leftist Europeans.
Right. That's the alliance, and also they share this utopian ideology that they have to conquer the world. I mean, it's in that sense, Islam is no different than communism, or for that matter, Nazism. They want to have world hegemony. I mean, it's part of their religion. They believe there's one God in heaven, Allah, and there can only be one nation on earth, the Ummah, which is God's nation, Islamic.
Yeah. This is why Hitler himself got along so well with Husseini.
Husseini, exactly.
Was the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem.
Oh, the Nazis revered Islam. They bemoaned the fact that Charles Martel defeated the Islamic invaders at Poitiers in France, because they felt like had Europe become Muslim, it would have been completely in sync with the Nazi ideology, and it would have been. They want to have international control. The word Islam means to submit. They need complete submission. Harvard professor Samuel Huntington wrote a very important book about this, where he talked about Islam's bloody borders, and that the Islamic world divides the world into two parts: the world of war, Dar el-Ab, which is us, and Dar el-Salam, the world of peace, which is them. And that ultimately you have to have Dar el-Islam, the entire world submitted to Islam. And that's what they're trying to do. That's what they've done in every country that they've tried to occupy, including Europe and parts of Asia and Africa. and North America. And they are allied with their brethren, the international communists, who want to do the same thing. Now, which side thinks they're going to ultimately be in control? I don't know. I mean, ultimately, they'll blow each other up, of course, as usually happens.
Well, that would be
But,
nice.
right. We can all stand back and have popcorn. But the problem is that the alliance, the intersectionality, if you will,
That's a good
is
left-wing word. Thank
a
you.
good left-wing word, yes, and expands into areas where you can have Queers for Palestine supporting an organization that throws homosexuals off the rooftops
Yeah.
because they all are trying to do the same thing. They'll work out these little details later, that who cares? They don't have much humanity. They're sort of like AI in that way. There's no like soul. There's no consciousness. There's no ability to actually reason. It's basically a faith that's not digitized yet, but it is a faith. And after the event of October the 7th, it became out in the open. When you had this atrocity committed against a Western democratic country, Israel, you would think that people would have been hitting the streets supporting Israel, but no, they were supporting the destruction of Israel. And these were rational, Western thinking students at colleges like the best in the country: Columbia, Harvard, Princeton, UCLA.
Like I said, that at the very core of left-wing thought is anti-Semitism. So that goes along with it. They've always denied it, but anybody with a functioning brain could see it from the beginning.
Yeah.
So it was very convenient to almost instantly forget that 12 or 1,300 people on the Israeli side were killed immediately on October 7th, but then they started focusing on these wildly exaggerated casualty figures coming out of Hamas. And
they denied what actually happened. And they continue to not discuss it. The anti-Semitism of the left. I mean, I heard of an interesting talk, a brief talk about this by Victor Davis Hanson of Stanford. I don't know if you follow him. Tremendous thinker, a military historian, a sociologist. And that he notes that the left-wing anti-Semitism is basically a hatred of Israel and Jews because of, number one, they're capitalists, they're independent thinkers. This goes back to Marx, talk about self-hating Jews. The idea that he felt that in his notorious pamphlet on the Jewish question, he felt that Jews stood for self-interest, huckstering, which is another word for the trade of goods and services, and money, which is another word for the abstract value of currency that is independent. These are things, institutions, that are the bedrock of any society. It's kind of ironed into who we are. We all trade with each other various things, both tangible and abstract. We all need a means of exchange. Even the most primitive societies have money. They'll designate a seashell as a form of money. It's endowed with an agreed upon value, even though it actually doesn't have intrinsic value, although gold does. But it's used as a means to exchange goods and services and to preserve and accumulate value from work. So Marx wanted to get rid of these things, and he saw those things as Jewish. And he felt that by making Judaism impossible, as he said, those institutions would wither away and you would end up with international communism. So the left hates Judaism because it does stand for those values. It stands for self-reliance. It stands for the individual under God. It stands for very much, and they blame Judaism for the creation of Christianity. Look, Christianity came out of Judaism, right? They blame Judaism for the creation of America. America came out of Christianity. I mean, the values that were there and that were espoused in the Torah at Sinai have led to an advance in these institutions, which have led to independent thinking, sovereign individuals under God. That's what the left wants to destroy. So they hate Judaism. They hate it because they hate capitalism. They also hate God, and they want to replace God with themselves.
Well, you're right about all that stuff, but then I have to ask the question that no one ever asked: how did such ridiculous ideas gain currency, other than the fact that academia has been a disaster for 100+ years, poisoning the minds of our youth?
I think that these ideas of overthrowing God and replacing reality itself with a man-made structure that is run by them is an intoxicating idea. It is an idea that basically is the very core of hubris. In other words, we're going to create realities. We're going to create moralities that fit us so we can control them. That's what the French Revolution was all about. So the Russian Revolution was all about, or the coup d'etats. And, it's very powerful. I get it. I have to read Karl Marx for my class right now in sociology, and it is powerful stuff. You read this stuff like, wow, it's like man can reinvent these structures. You can tear everything down and start from scratch. It's very, in a way, anarchistic. And, there is a certain element of anarchy that's interesting, but it has to be done within a context of morality, which they strip away. They want to create their own new morality. So it's a very intoxicating idea. It's very empowering. And when you have people who embrace it together, then it takes on the idea of a wolf pack. They increase their power. And then when they go underground with secret societies, it increases it even more. So it's power. It's, instead of God being in control, it's man being in control. Whittaker Chambers wrote about this in the introduction to his autobiography, Witness, where he says that we have a choice between God or man. If we believe in God, then we understand logos, we understand the order of the universe as natural, and that we understand our role in it. But if we worship man, then we reject that, and we put power in our own ability to recreate ourselves in our own image. And that's what the left has always tried to do, whatever they call it, in every generation. So they hate God.
Somehow, the fact that it's never worked anywhere doesn't matter, because there's always a new, naive generation
of useful idiots. Yeah, they have what Lenin called useful idiots.
Yeah.
Right? They get people to, they kind of embrace this exciting concept. They can have all of these wonderful things, not because of anything they've accomplished, but just because they exist. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to make anything. You just are entitled to it. It's the ultimate form of entitlement. And so they have formed this alliance with the radical Islamists because their ideas are similar. They're actually not even as bad in a way. They do believe in some kind of a creator of the universe. And, there are actually, I would say, some reasonably good Muslims. It's a little different. It's not, and I think that the level of atrocity among Muslims is not as bad either. If you take a look at how many people were killed in communist China and in Russia and in every other communist country in the world, there has been nothing like it in history. It is completely driven to destroy any opposition, even the most remote. So you have this alliance, and it is anti-Semitic. Victor Davis Hanson mentions and identifies the nature of left-wing anti-Semitism, but he also brings up the fact that there's now a right-wing anti-Semitism that is emerging. In that, he talked about Owens, what's her name? Candace Owens, and of course Nick Fuentes. We've talked about him. And I would add E. Michael Jones, even though I don't think he's getting that kind of traction. But they dislike Jews because they believe that we are responsible for killing Jesus, right? And it's old-fashioned, Christ killer kind of anti-Semitism. They don't. I don't know if and from that they tend to be, even though they claim to be embracing conservative values, they also imbibe a lot of the left-wing stuff about Jews being materialistic. I mean, wanting money and achievement and being a part of this world. And and I think that there's a race element to it too, according to Victor Davis Hanson. And he's probably right that we are a race. They look at it in terms of our biology. And so he says that the reason why they are now getting some traction is because the left has already paved the way. They have already gotten away with this, particularly on campuses and in the media and even in Congress and in government. And they have not been stopped. They have not been challenged. And then, of course, the Jewish establishment is going about challenging this in the completely wrong way by trying to censor things. That is not the way to go. The ADL, no, that's not going to work. That's going to make it worse. They're trying to deplatform, and they're calling for the censorship regime. This guy Josh Hammer, he wants to. I don't know much about him, but he's like, these people should be, destroyed. And no, that's not the way to go. I really am. That's going to make matters a lot worse. They need to step up and challenge these ideas in the sphere of public opinion, not try to get people taken off of the air. I don't think that Candace Owens and them, they're not as bad as the people that are supporting Hamas. I mean, I think that generally they recognize Israel's right to exist. They're not calling. I mean, E. Michael Jones might be skirting the border a little bit there with with his statements that Jews should not be allowed to be in public life. All right, I agree with that. That's crazy. I mean, he's doing the same thing in a way the ADL is doing to him, and that might be what he's responding to. I don't know, but the point is that they are not as bad, right? I don't think that they are in the same league as Rashida Tlaib in Congress, who says that talking about the Holocaust makes her feel warm and fuzzy.
Yeah.
Or, trying to, my own Congresswoman, Ayanna Pressley, and Omar and them, they want to not recognize Israel anymore and cut off all funding and declare it a terrorist state. The right wing, I don't think Nick Fuentes, I haven't really listened to him, and I doubt if I'd agree with him on anything, but I don't think he goes that far. I don't think that Candace Owens is that radical about it. I think that they don't hate Jews. I mean, it's not like, they don't hate capitalism anyway. But they are making inroads, and they are forming alliances with this Red-Green Alliance. It's just that simple. I think that this is going to become a growing problem going forward with the election of Mamdani in New York, with millions of Muslims entering this country over the past 20 years who don't seem to be interested in, I wouldn't say all. I mean, I've interviewed Zuhdi Jasser, who is a moderate Muslim leader, a great man, who wants to, he's very American, and he's criticized his own faith for this reason. So there are good, solid people there, but there is this strain there that is continuing to hold on to and adhere to the need to implement radical Sharia law, which is the same thing as communism, control over all personal aspects of your life, and the concept of jihad, except it's in a country like the United States and the Western democracies, it's not open, bloody war. It's more kind of a, maybe a Gramscian approach. So,
well, of course, this was all part of the grand plan of the Immigration Act of 1965, right? That you were going to open things up to non-Europeans. And it's been somewhat successful in that you're changing the definition of what America is. And we're losing our core values. um, which I wrote about a little bit, that it's not so surprising, all these socialist victories that have occurred,
Right.
whether it's Dami or the woman that won the mayor race in Seattle after the ballots were counted for 8
I know.
days.
Well, that gets into a question of like voter fraud, frankly. I mean, this is something that we've been talking about this. I've been talking about this since the election of 2020 and before.
Yeah.
They have to get handle on that. They have to expose that. That is the mother lode. That is where it all goes to. They have to get voter ID. They have to get rid of the goddamn machines. They have to stop absentee ballots unless it's overseas military or somebody who has a damn good reason for it. And they have to have a national holiday for election day and everybody votes. That's what they do in every other.
This becomes though sipping on the third rail, because even though you could probably make a reasonable argument that most of the voter fraud is on the Democratic side, I think when you talk about burning down the house, so to speak, all the conventional people, including your rhinos and so on, they'd be very reluctant to change this corrupt system. I'm pessimistic in that I think the only way, like we talked about a couple of times, you can't fix the FBI. You have to burn it down, create a different agency. And unfortunately, with the voting, I'm not exactly sure how you reform it, because virtually every major precinct is corrupt.
Right, and probably has always been. I mean, this isn't
Yeah.
new. This country has never really figured out how to have an honest election. We're probably the first country to do this. And, but yet ultimately it's controlled by these local machines. It goes way back. Goes
Of course, I mean, it took on a life of its own. Okay. This is where the rubber meets the road. So if you were fundamentally corrupt, as most politicians are, wouldn't that be your first place to try to infect, get into the local precincts?
Hold on to the machine, and the machine picks these people and puts them up, and they're usually very insufficient type of people. I mean, people that can be blackmailed very easily. I mean, this nitwit in Seattle is a good example. I mean, she dropped out of college. She moved back with her parents. She's never had a job. She's a nobody. I mean, she's a complete nitwit. And it's a week later, and
she's perfect, though.
The what?
She's perfect. That's Bernie Sanders' resume.
Yeah, probably. And her claim to fame is that she's a socialist. And thus,
I guess if I never had to support myself, I might be a socialist.
You are a socialist, actually, by by definition, right? I mean, you've done nothing. You're basically living off of the largesse of others, and you feel entitled.
So again, what blows my mind is this is not a secret. So, all right, you want to be a mayor of a major city. What experience do you have doing anything? Nothing. Never done anything.
No, I mean, look at a mayor of a city. I mean, people need to stick with their lane. They need to fix the potholes. They need to put pavement on the sidewalk. They need to make sure that buildings are properly constructed. They need to help the poor in terms of making sure that the charities are doing the job. And maybe
if someone were going to be a mayor, a socialist mayor, Pacific Northwest would be the ideal place. I don't know what is wrong with those people, but the weirdest stuff happens up there. When they had a big snowfall in Seattle, they were debating about whether they should put salt on the road, because I'm not making this up. Because as the salt and the ice melts, it'll roll down into the ocean, changing the salt concentration in the ocean.
Oh, they have the same thing.
Red green. It was this, environmental factor that the entire oceans of the world are going to be affected by the amount of salt we use once in a blue moon
It's
on
bad
the beach
science.
in Seattle.
It's bad science. They're doing it in Boston too. They used to drop the snow in the ocean, and that was that. And yeah, there was salt in it. Now what they do is they pile it up in this gigantic abandoned brownfield in South Boston, and there's this really dirty, ugly mountain that basically melts into the ground, and it's more polluting than ever. It
Yeah.
melts into the entire water system. And people go out there hasn't been a big snowstorm for a while in Boston, and it has nothing to do with global warming, by the way. But they go out with little rulers and they measure, by April, by May, and place bets on when the final little piece melts. And during that big snowstorm in the April Fool's storm, I think it went all the way up to the end of May.
Yeah.
But it creates this filthy field. I mean, it's not a good environmental approach. It would be better to just drop it in the ocean like they were doing, where it dissipates, and probably the ocean could use a little salt. It's natural.
So who comes up with this stuff? And more importantly, who believes it? And the answer is, hey, notwithstanding that you have a fairly significant Muslim population in New York City, so they all voted for Mondale.
And the left wingers did. I mean, the same people that voted for De Blasio, who was, is not all that different. But the difference is that, look, this guy is a radical Muslim, and he's, an fairly open, most openly communist person. It's a very ominous situation. Even most New Yorkers people I know in New York who are left wingers are concerned. It's just,
why did they vote for him?
Because they just, he's this stupid. I don't know. They voted for De Blasio too. They just think that the system will hold against him, and they want to make their anger.
So in other words, it's so imbued with these idiots.
And also the city the only person they could come up with was Cuomo. He was horrible.
Well, okay. I wasn't even going to mention that, but that was even worse.
It was.
Okay, the fact that this guy wins the primary. All right. So out of the whole world, the only guy you can come up with is a disgraced former governor.
You'd think that in New York, they
right?
might have some real talent. Maybe somebody could have stepped up. And even like a Michael Bloomberg, he wasn't really my cup of tea, but at least he had some background. He had some Wall Street background. You'd have important people in New York.
So nobody stepped up. Why did no one step up?
I think that New York has become enthralled by, first of all, I think that the voting fraud is there and the machines are there. And you've got this radical element that, it's the same phenomena of going after senators and congressmen to keep the government shut down. They have taken over the party. You have them lamenting the fact that the government was reopening so people could get freaking paid. Yeah. And you could have, people on food stamps getting, they don't give a damn. They wanted to keep it shut down, and they're viciously attacking like John Fetterman and other people who are saying, hey, I'm not part of these radical states. Pennsylvania is not not California. It's not, it's not Maryland.
Yeah, but then, that doesn't go very far for me, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
It's okay for him and the few others that cross the line to make these kind of statements. But you know what? Why don't you grow a pair and just leave the party?
I agree. They should. It's that party has become completely captivated by the Squad and Mamdani. And, this is something that, I don't know what on the one hand, it seems to me that they have really dug their grave. They're never going to be elected outside of Chicago and New York and Los Angeles. On the other hand, it's a dangerous phenomenon. They could.
Well, it seems to be a different sort of radicalism in those three towns you just mentioned. In LA, and fortunately I don't live right in the city, they developed this weird affection for putting ugly lesbians in power fire chief, the mayor,
Right.
some of the supervisors.
Did they learn
in New
anything
York,
from the Palisades fire? I mean, did
yeah,
anything
well,
change?
that it's now starting to come out a little more. How all the DEI, I mean, the DEI was ruining the fire department. My God, back in the 1980s.
But
I
has
mean,
anything changed? I mean, now that you've had these horrendous fires blowing up liberal houses, has
well,
anything changed?
the LA Fire Department has had problems for a long time, and what because I was very well connected with the fire department for years. They were a big customer. I knew a lot of people, and it would make you sick. Okay. Um, there are a couple of interesting stories. One guy that was very close to uh, was a fire captain. He never made chief, and he took the exam and so on. And you know where this is
I know
going,
what
right?
happened. Yeah.
If you were a minority taking that chief exam, they added 25 points to your score.
Right.
So it was virtually impossible for a white heterosexual to become a chief. It was that simple. They didn't deny it.
I got it. Yeah.
Okay. The other thing that happened was there was vast corruption at the chief engineer level, to the point that, and they didn't even try to hide it. One of the guys ended up trying to open up fireworks for sale in the city of Los Angeles. Well, they're not that bad. You know, the kids want them. So he goes into the big fireworks thing. It ends up that he was being paid a lot of money by those lobbyists. But here's the best part. So he has to resign. So what does he do after that? He becomes the head of the NFPA, National Fire Protection Association, which is the group that writes all the codes. So they take this schmuck for failing at that job to put him in another. I mean, the whole fire service is so corrupt, we could have a whole show on it.
Well, I mean, it's kind of a microcosm of a lot of local politics going way back. I mean, we could talk about how in the 1960s there was this collusion between ultra-rich liberals and corrupt black politicians whom they put in office to create these horrendous political machines that destroyed American cities. But the question is that given what happened and the results and the obvious malfeasance, aren't the people of Los Angeles, the liberals in Los Angeles, questioning anything? I mean, haven't they learned anything from that?
Well, here's the thing, and I'm sure it applies everywhere. Yeah, they're questioning this. And the people at Palisades that watch their homes burn down, they're questioning it. But you have to realize that if you've been imbued since the time you were 3 months old, that you have to be liberal and vote Democrat, and now you see, hey, just a bunch of corrupt SOBs, they're not going to change. I mean, some do. I've met some.
You mean they're still holding fast to all of this, even in the face of seeing the property be destroyed? I mean, has there been any improvements in Los Angeles since the fire? Has the city done anything to? I mean, this is something that Trump brought up when he went out there, I think just a few days after he was sworn in.
Not really.
Yeah, and he said, look, we could get this thing fixed in a matter of maybe a month instead of what's going to happen, which is nothing. People won't even be able to take the debris off their front lawns unless they're going to break regulations, and there's layers of zoning laws and regulations and
that was the other thing. I hate to beat a dead horse here, but the Coastal Commission, who would be in charge of all the rebuilding in the Palisades area, again, you just got to tell the facts. It's 9 lesbians.
And there's and each one of them gets a say. They get a check. Did you see this recent testimony with Marco Rubio, who did a tremendous job in Congress, being grilled by some ultra left wing representative, and why are you sending this money to Mexico, to Argentina? Or it wasn't that issue. It was some other issue. But he's like, listen, in order for us to get anything done at the State Department to conduct America's foreign policy in the interests of this country, we have to go through something like 30 different agencies, and each one of them gets to throw their 2 cents into it, and they can stop it. And we can't function that way in this day and age. We have to be able to move. We have to be able to be swift. We have to get rid of it, because there's, why are you getting rid of USAA aid and this and that? We can't have, these agencies are all like just sucking, to use a proverbial, sucking off the public teat. They're just sort of, and they all have their hand in policy, and you cannot get, it's complete paralysis. And so we have to consolidate this. We have to get it down. And he's like tremendous. I mean, he's really laying it out. The other one that's great is Besant. He's like a goat. I don't know if you've seen him on TV. He rips. I mean, these people start. I mean, he doesn't take any prisoners. I mean, Trump has some good people around him this time. They're like, oh yeah,
he learned his word.
So they are
trying. Again, in terms of, are the LA people wising up? I think that some of them, when they start rebuilding in Palisades, realizing how bad this is. I mean, unfortunately, a significant number of those properties were hereditary, to the extent that a lot of these people didn't have insurance because they couldn't afford it. All right, they're taking someone with, let's say, a modest income, now is living in a $5 million house because of inflated property values, so they could barely afford the property tax.
They don't have any actual. They have that in Boston too. I mean, and that fire, didn't it almost take out the San Simeon and the Hearst Estate and the Getty Museum? I mean,
well, there were other fires up there, but it was devastating. If you drive on Coast Highway, it looks like a war zone. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. And
it didn't have to be that bad, but it just shows you what happens.
And a year later, has anything been done to clean it up, or to, have people been able to, people rebuilding? I mean, what's going on?
Well, it's going to take forever. If you want to put up a stick in the ground in that area, you go through the Coastal Commission. It's going to take you 5 years.
Oh, then it's just been abandoned. And what are people pissed off about that?
Oh, of course they are. And then you have the real idiots coming out and saying, well, now all these buildings are burned down on Pacific Ocean. So now, isn't it great? We can see, we have an unobstructed view now.
Oh, great.
And
because everything's been wiped out.
It's pathetic. And I don't know, maybe this is the wake-up call that they needed.
But is it? I mean, it's a year later, and Newsom is now busy running for president. I mean, what the hell is, Bass doesn't seem to have been harmed. The whole rotten, corrupt.
Well, okay, but Chuck, the reason Bass hasn't been harmed is, if you really believe in your heart of hearts that the answer to the world problems is to have an ugly lesbian mayor, then it's very difficult for you to say, gee, maybe this was a mistake.
Yeah, maybe my house is a
competent individual.
I'm standing on the ruins of my house. Everything's been destroyed, but I still love this mayor. I mean, what the hell? I mean, this is insane. I mean, I guess it's no more insane than
maybe
Trump.
You haven't met some of these kinds of people.
No, I've seen them. I know it's bizarre. But the problem is that I would hope that over time, it's the same thing that empowers Trump's arrangement. We've talked about this last week. We talked about suburban, rich, well-to-do, highly educated white women is the core. And and probably maybe they've had abortions. Oops, I'm going to get in trouble on TikTok now. I'm just waiting. That comment is going to get me possibly. I just will tell you, TikTok, I might be gone in a very short time for making that comment. Anyways, so far so good. We'll see. Anyways, it's this derangement. I
Well,
mean,
there are people like that outside of politics. I mean,
but I would think
my
that with
fear
all of the stuff going on and with the Trump administration being so successful in so many areas,
doesn't
I
matter. I mean,
yeah, but aren't
the
they going to at least
example.
peel off like a small percentage of them?
Well,
I
maybe a
mean,
small percentage, but the example I can give you, it's more human nature. It's not politics. Okay, um, my sons went to a Catholic high school that at one point had one of the top football teams in the state of California. Now,
mhm,
went through some coaching changes, and they got a guy who decided that he had a game plan. And apparently it didn't matter to him that he lost every goddamn game in the season.
right.
And of course, that was because the boys didn't execute.
I get it. In other
And
words, communism didn't work because they didn't really do it well enough.
yes,
Right.
yes.
Okay.
And
I
there
mean,
are people that really have
yeah,
that
but at
belief.
some point, you're going to tear something down. I mean, eventually, some people are going to wake up. I would think. I mean, it's just a bizarre situation. It just, I mean, I do think that people are waking up, but people that I know really aren't. And they're
Slowly,
not to.
slowly. But
Yeah.
you probably know in your own life hardcore lefties
Yes, I do.
who will probably not change.
No, they won't. They'll goose step right into the grave. They'll never, right? They'll just, zig heil all the way down. I mean, it's their entire being. They're empty. They've got
Thank
no
you, Comrade Stalin, for putting me in this firing squad. Yeah.
people. There were people that, if you look at the history of Soviet Russia, that did happen.
Yeah.
People were thanking Stalin while they were being sent off to the Gulag.
Yeah.
It's just they believed it, and this is the right thing. It's for the good of all of humanity. Sacrificing. It's a kind of, yeah, it's a kind of radicalism. I mean, you could look at the Julius and Ethel Rosenberg are an example of that. They're willing to go to the gas chamber rather than give up this great and glorious. There we go. Nope, TikTok. Nope, let me just see. Was it Julius and Ethel Rosenberg? What did I say? Oh, okay, I'm good. Just a little just waiting for them to pull the plug. Anyways,
especially in the case of Ethel, they gave her a chance.
But she
gave her a chance because she was a mother, and she'd rather die.
No, she would rather die, and she sends a letter to her quote precious children, telling them that they were on the right side and don't think about this and keep marching forward. Right? I mean, it's so bizarre, and it's and for what? I mean, anyways, Mike, what do you have coming up on your Substack?
Well, I just had an article come out yesterday.
Yeah.
Which goes into, what's the actual title of the thing? Democratic Party gains, Democratic Party losses. And we go into, and made one of the points that you did, that both in the case of Winston Sears and your friend Jack Chiarelli, these are not exactly MAGA individuals.
No, they did not invite Trump. They were afraid of Trump. They didn't have the courage to stand up and say, hey, I'm with Trump. I'm glad. I mean, even like in Boston, I mean, you had, people say, look, I don't like Trump, but if he's doing something good for my city, I'll be with him. Yeah. These people wouldn't even go that far. I mean, they're so timid. I mean, they're so afraid that they're going to get attacked by the New York Times and by the media. They won't get their fat faces on social network. That's what it comes down to. It's like it's an ego trip. It is.
Well, in the case of Winston Sears, she tried to beat a dead horse with the transgender school thing,
right?
Which, to be honest, did work for Youngkin,
sure,
because we're just being exposed at that point. But to come in 4 years later,
right,
and talk about that, well, okay, great, that's old news.
Passe. They needed to talk about what the hell was going on in the economy. And get with it. That's kind of an assumed thing already.
And in the case of the New Jersey guy, as you may know, he lost a primary in 2017, and then in 2021 actually ran for governor and lost.
Right.
So it's sort of like what
It's
Tommy's
already-
doing. You know,
yeah,
how many times is the loser going to run? You know?
yeah, you can't really go back after 2 times. You know, that it doesn't really, it usually doesn't work. I mean, very few politicians can pull that off. Nixon did it, but that's unusual. Anyway, he's a great man, by the way. By the way, speaking of Nixon, I don't know, I'm watching some of the clips of his interviews. He was a brilliant guy. He really was. I think that he got in trouble with the establishment, actually, but that's a whole different story.
Well, he did. And the other thing is, he always wanted to be one of the cool kids.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he had some serious flaws that the enemy knew how to exploit.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Mike, as always, thanks for joining me.
Well, it's always fun. And by the way, you were able to do a whole show on TikTok without getting dinged.
I'm still on TikTok. You're right. All right. So,
all right.
as I say, God bless America.